Hello, welcome back to the Next Gen Rugby podcast. Big podcast today. Sadly, no Will Roberts, but alongside me is Wilf Kemsley and a rather special guest. Charlie Hodgson has joined via Zoom. How are you, Charlie?
I'm good, thank you. I'm all right. Thank you very much for having me. It's good to be here.
Quite all right, quite all right. How are you, Wilf?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Managed to navigate through London at this time with the summer heat and the transport problems, but we're here, we're locked in, we're ready for another podcast.
We certainly are. For those that don't know, we're recording today on the one of the days where the strikes are coming through London and it's causing chaos. I've got five-a-side football later. I'm not sure I'm going to be making it. It's absolute carnage out there. Not something that we need to worry about too much though while we record. Charlie, it's nice to have you along. For those that don't know, Charlie Hodgson, former England international, Lions tourist in 2005, Sale and Saracens star fly half, Premiership titles, and finished off with a European Cup title as well. It's quite a glittering career.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a bad way to finish my career, that's for sure. I think the last 2 weeks of my career were European Cup final win, 2 weeks later Premiership final win, and I kind of stepped away. So not a bad way to go out. I mean, I feel incredibly fortunate that I had 16 years, 11 at Sale and then 5 at Saracens. That was just two very different clubs, but both really, really like enjoyable moments, times through my career, to be honest. And to win at both teams was also really good.
Yeah, and I suppose oddly, Sale and Saracens have become almost inextricably linked with Al Sanderson going from Saracen to Sale, and you've seen a lot of players going back and forth, seem to have quite similar cultures nowadays. I suppose different in your day in that you left Sale and then moved into almost the start of the Saracens project in a way. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I'd gone from an environment, certainly the back end of the Sale days was the Alex Ferguson treatment. If things don't go so well, you get a boot thrown at your head or something. We're not quite as extreme, but like it definitely felt like that at times. Certainly the early part of my career, it was a really nice culture. Up to probably about 2007, 2008, and things started to change a little bit. A bit of a roller coaster, a bit of rocky, players coming and going, coaches coming and going, and I reached the end of that contract in 2011 and just figured that I needed a change. Otherwise, if I didn't do then, I never would have done. And Saracens, were a year into their sort of massive change that they had. Obviously, they had Black Monday and loads of players were discarded and loads of players were brought in. And I had a good friend, Richard Wigglesworth, who'd been there a year to give me a bit of a heads up about what the club was like, and I had a good approach from them to go. So it was a bit of a no-brainer. Like I said, I could have finished my career at Sale, really. But I just needed a change. I needed to work in a different environment. I needed to work with different coaches, different players. I needed to challenge myself, not again, but I needed to, just try something new. And so the opportunity to join Sarries was too good to turn down, really.
It was sort of an amazing run once you got there. And obviously, there's a lot of guys now that probably came through towards the back end of your career. And actually, the one that jumped out to me, middle of the Lions tour, Wilf, I can't remember if you remember, but when Owen Farrell came on, I think it was the second test, he came on at 13, and everyone was going, "What are you doing bringing Owen Farrell on at 13?" And obviously, Andy Farrell knows him as well as anyone, but someone else who knows that Owen Farrell can play at 13 is Charlie Hodgson here, because if I'm not mistaken, quite a lot of Owen Farrell's early career was spent playing in that outside centre role while you were at 10 for Saracens, or have I completely lost the plot?
No, I think you probably lost the plot a little bit. No,
that sounds like me.
No, we played a little bit of 10-12 together, and Brad Barrett was also part of that centred partnership. I suppose you're not necessarily that crazy in the sense that they would interchange a little bit. It was never always straightforward 12-13, 13-12. They did mix and match. We moved around depending on the types of sort of moves that we were calling and plays that we'd be calling. So not far off, I guess. He was. I think part of my role of going into Sarries initially was to be kind of a senior mentor to him and watching him come through. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know whether he necessarily needed me given the fact that he had his dad already. and his dad had experienced so much already as a coach and as a player, and obviously at that stage was a coach of Sarries as well. So, but I think it was just a good opportunity, and also for me to learn from him. Like he was different as a young player, as an 18, 19-year-old. He was different to a lot of the guys that I've seen and come across. Unbelievably driven. Now, of course, people know that about him. Unbelievably outspoken is probably the wrong word, but like he was not afraid to give his opinion about stuff. He was not afraid to tell people what he thought. He was not afraid to demand the very highest from people. And of course, it's probably maybe earlier on it might have rubbed people up the wrong way, because it's like people are like, hold on a sec, who was this 18-year-old kid telling me what to do as a 28, 29-year-old? But you could just see that the drive that he had was just incredible, and and obviously he went on and has gone on to do amazing, incredible things. But you could certainly see it from a young age that he was like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll sort of come back to this, because there's a load of interesting stuff I want to get into. Not least the sort of dynamic when obviously Alex Good coming through at the same time, who was a 10 at that point and almost sort of had to find a new role for himself. With Owen coming through, but talking about leadership in that under 18 space, obviously your lad Henry's coming through at Saracens under 18 now, playing for Mill Hill. I know that Wilf's been keeping a real eye on what's going on in that space as well. And first of all, it's great to see your lad coming through, and that must be awesome as a family to sort of see that progression for him. But in a more general sense, you've got you're a sort of a rugby dad now, I suppose, and you've got an eye on what's going on in that under 18 space. How much has it changed since perhaps someone like Owen was coming through, but then looking back to when you were coming through as well, sort of 15 years before that, I suppose. Where I look at it now, it feels as though it's so much more professional in terms of even the engagement that these young lads get. But what's your perspective on those sort of shifts as time has gone on?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I'm proud to see Henry and his journey that he's sort of creating for himself really at the moment. And the game is changing like so much. Obviously, senior level it changes year to year, and even as a player when I was playing, it was unrecognizable from year to year, just in terms of physicality and athletic ability. But you just have to look at these kids now at 18 who have been part of a pathway now for best part of 3-4 years. It's just incredible the changes that they can make physically, skill development. I suppose the one thing I would say is that, I suppose in comparison to when I was coming through, there was no such thing as academies. They had academies, like you can call them academies, but you had one man and his dog basically choosing who they thought was good enough to come out of school or not. Certainly not the pathways that there are now. And I think one thing I've kind of noticed is that pressure and that pull of academies, of the pathways, whilst it might only start out under 15, it feels like there's an element from a younger age that people are starting to think about it and it's on their radar. And don't know if that's a good thing or not. I'm not sure. I guess that's only a byproduct of the game feeling and being more professional. And the expectations on these young kids to do everything and to be in the right shape, the best shape possible by the time they reach academy games and obviously into that selection process for contracts. I mean, it's unrecognizable really. And so I think, it's fascinating to watch, and just watching the standard of games is just incredible really. I love watching the schoolboy level, because I think there's some really, really talented kids out there.
Yeah, and you feel like, I don't know about what you think. I mean, Wilf, you're probably best placed to talk about this. You see as much as anyone. It feels to me as though the freedom that guys get to play with, particularly at school. I mean, even if we, not to single out Mill Hill and Saracens, but if you probably look at the freedom that Mill Hill play with versus the freedom as you move into that academy, there is a real sort of sense of
maybe not the weekend against Northampton School for Boys, but let's
no one got the chance for any freedom there other than the NSP boys.
I think it was the other way around. NSP were unbelievable.
They were absolutely outstanding. But you've seen it, Wilf, haven't you? That ability that the guys have to chance their arm, and it's something that Charlie was great at as a player, with getting the ball through the hands and playing. You see that so much.
Yeah, I think it's a criticism that academy system has received from a lot of young players, is that you you leave your school setting where you're obviously quite a big fish if you've made it into that academy setup, especially towards the senior level. And then suddenly you're in a group of 25, 30 lads who are all vying not just for a contract at the end of the season, but selection week on week for Prem Rugby, which is, the league is a full season. It's a proper league. It's got full coaching staffs behind all of them. So you're playing a sort of a miniaturized version of the professional game at 18 years old, which is why it produces so many players. But as you were saying, Charlie, compared to how it was, how were young players coming through when you had joined Saracens? You joined as a more senior player. We discussed previously how you started at Sale, where you were at university, and then you went to pre-season after 1 year at uni, and then you didn't go back. You stayed with Sale all the way through. There are some players that go through that route at university level now, but Saracens signed 17 of their academy players last season, all who are now involved with the senior side. They've all left school. They're now full-time rugby players. How do you compare those two transitions, Charlie, like for a young player, compared to how you came through, how you saw people from Saracens come through, and how they come through now in these big batches where they've all come through and played together for at least a couple of years?
I suppose you only have to look at the what's happening at senior level to see why they've invested so much in those academy players. And not all of them will be on, let's say, full-time contracts. Some will have university style contracts and they'll disappear after uni for the terms. But I think, and I don't even know what the stat is in terms of salaries, but and what their hopes are for the next few years. But I know that they want to win the European Cup with a very high percentage of homegrown talent, and so by doing that, you need to invest heavily in the group that are coming through. And certainly with the finances of the game, there's less you can do in terms of bringing players from the outside. You've got to pay a lot of money for that. So I think if you can get away with finding the gems like Saracens then did, in terms of that real sort of golden era of the Owens and the Jackson Rays and the George Crews and Jamie George and Will Fraser, don't want to miss anybody out, but like that whole era, they were very fortunate to have such good players who were all very, very ready to step up very, very soon after they left school. But I suppose in saying all that, Jamie had to wait a long time for his opportunity because he had Scott Brits and John Smith, two unbelievably good South African hookers themselves. So
most patient man in rugby, Jamie George. Sat behind Dylan Hartley for about 50 caps as well.
Unbelievable, isn't it? But the fact that Jamie still managed to achieve what he's achieved, it just shows, I think, and this is one thing I think that a lot of young kids can learn. Jamie is the perfect example of that. Sometimes you leave school having been a big fish in your school and even in the academy setup, and then you join, and then sometimes you might see your peers from England 20s or England 18s getting an opportunity at first team level, and it might not be happening for you. And then there's that impatience to want to play the whole time. But actually, if you kind of take Jamie's lead and Jamie's example in this, if you're happy to wait and you're happy to learn from good people around you, you can still have unbelievably good careers if you're willing to wait a little bit longer and not just jump ship because you think you're going to get an opportunity somewhere else. I think it's really important these young guys reflect on why they're at a club, what their development is going to be like at a club, and where they see their potential going, not just in a year's time, but actually 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Where do they see it? Because I think there's some impatience at times.
Massively so. I think the sort of almost the rush, the panic sometimes to feel like you need to be somewhere can be overwhelming for some young guys. I guess talking about sort of young people, bring them through, helping them in their game. Rugby Buddy, your brainchild. Tell us about Rugby Buddy. In fact, well, first of all, I'll tell people how to get to Rugby Buddy, which is www.rugbybuddy.com. Tell us all about it.
Just to get that in, just to make sure.
Well, I always like to make sure I get the website in nice and early before I forget it.
No, so this comes from, I guess, two elements. Firstly is my own experience as a player and kind of going through those younger age groups. I was constantly told that I was too small. I would never make it. The stress that you kind of put on yourself for going through the trials and all that kind of thing. That to then see my son go through the pathways, seeing players discarded, seeing players who are perceived to be the best ones, and the next thing you know, they're not involved in the system anymore. there's a huge fallout from that, and for me, there's an element of protection in terms of making sure that they are mentally supported. There's so much out there in terms of skill development and physical development, and of course, all these kids go through a lot of that when they're young, and they start younger now than ever. But I wanted to create something that was focused around building the right mindset for playing at one at a decent level, but when you're feeling like there's pressured moments, and that certainly happens, as I said before, those moments start earlier and earlier now, and so it's just the whole idea is helping people play their best, just ultimately with more confidence and more consistency, and playing with that freedom that they want to play with, which you sometimes find at school level, but then it starts to change the higher up in the game they go. So it's about protecting that younger generation as much as possible. And yeah, it's out there at the moment. I only launched officially a few weeks ago. I run a pilot scheme at the start of the year to check the method in the madness, and feedback was great from that. So yeah, it's now up and running, and wanting to push it as much as possible. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak about it.
Oh, well, the young players and their development, their progress, their enjoyment is kind of what we're all about. And Wilf and I are on touchlines all the time, chatting to kids, chatting to young players, chatting to their coaches, and it does seem as though there is a real appetite, perhaps more than there's ever been, I think, for young players to want to improve themselves and to want to go an extra mile. Time was where it was you do what your coach says and you sort of feel like you tick the box, but the impression I get, and I don't know if you agree, Wilf, but it feels like there's an appetite to push for young people to push themselves more in certainly in their sort of rugby coaching side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. There are more and more opportunities every year from the school game and the club game as well, which has suffered since sort of the COVID era, but they're still really strong communities full of young people who want to get stuck into the game. And rugby has that ability as a sport because of the values that are so closely tied to it. I know this plays massively into what you do at Rugby Buddy, Charlie. Like the values that are tied into the game are just as important as what goes on the field. And that's something that I think continues to endear rugby to parents who want their kids to play a good level of sport, but also the kids themselves as they move into these programs. And it's not just in the high performance programs at big schools and successful clubs that have really important values that they wish to impart. I think it's every level of the game, and it's something that once the kids get latched onto, and it becomes something that they can really tie themselves to as they go through their stage of development, which I think is quite unique to rugby.
Yeah, massively. And actually, it ties me into a question I wanted to ask you about, Charlie, which is around the name Rugby Buddy. I mean, obviously, there's an aspect of it, which is it's your coaching buddy online. But it feels to me like there is a little bit of as Wilf's saying, rugby's where you make your mates when you're a young player. That's where you meet people, and a lot of coaching now leans on that sort of meeting people, having that sense of purpose, that sense of community. It feels as though there is a bit of a sort of dual thought process there.
Yeah, part of the power of this, which I hope is around the membership, is the fact that there's a community that's created alongside it. With the pilot group that I work with, they were from sort of different areas of the country, and when I posted them, it was all online. But when I posted them, said, "Would you ever be interested in getting together and meeting up and doing a session together and stuff?" They were like, "Yeah, when can we do it?" And it was just fascinating how we'd gone from the start where they were all a bit tentative and nervous around each other to actually by the end they were like, "When can we meet up?" Because actually they've created a really nice that community feel, which I think is really powerful. They all knew that they were in it together. They all knew that they were sharing similar journeys. They all when they started to listen to other people's stories and perspectives, they all suddenly, it was like a light bulb moment for them, going, actually, I'm not the only one that's thinking this. I'm not the only person that's done this. I'm not the only person that's made that mistake. And do you know what I mean? And it was really powerful. So the body element is that is it. It's about providing a support system, not only from me, because I've been there and done it and I get it, but also with each other, they can help each other.
You found you needed in your own career, obviously your career, when we look at it in totality, premierships, record point scorer, 38 England caps, hugely successful career, but wasn't without its tough moments for you. Those early years with England had some tough spells. is that something that you sort of reflect on from your own career and go, do you know what, I would have liked a better support group around in those early days, or perhaps you had one and you want to share with people how that's an important thing for them? Are there sort of parallels there for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think sports psychology was certainly in its infancy when I started playing, and I suppose the one thing that I always look back on in my career and go, what would I have done differently? And I would have chosen to have somebody might not have been a sports psychologist, it just might have been somebody from a high performance environment who got it and understood it and could help me through those moments. Certainly earlier in my career, because I needed it. And the problem was then, as I internalized everything, and it took me a long time to really sort of open up and start to share and really commit to doing something about it. I kind of had to work it out along the way. I made a lot of mistakes saying things to media when I probably shouldn't say things to media, and like you expose yourself a little bit. And I suppose there's a lot of learning in that just purely from experience itself. But I think there's also an element of, can you get ahead of all of that and go, how can you prepare the next generation, whether they make it as pro or not, but how can you deal with those life lessons that we're all going to face, from poor performances and mistakes and fear of failure and fear of criticism and all of those things that we all get, whether it's on the rugby field or just in life in general.
Hugely so. I mean, even down to us two chumps here, we get that all the time. Well, Wilf, right at the start of your commentary career, and you've sort of just had to learn by holding onto a microphone and hoping it all goes fine. Luckily for you, it has gone quite well. But that's the way these things go, isn't it? Sometimes you have got all those internal sort of demons kind of squirreling away in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this problem that sports had for a while. It's as you said, it's pretty well covered now in the professional game. But I'm not sure that people who have been in the professional game for a very long time sometimes understand the amount of pressure that these under-18s feel in their environment. When you have a tournament like St Joe's College, for example, St Joe's Festival is so important to that school, to the students who play in it, to all the students who watch it, and having played in that environment, I was like 15. It shouldn't have been such a overwhelming experience, but the amount of pressure that gets put on you as a youngster in that space is huge. And as you step into like Mill Hill, for example, very recently have gone through such a impressive run. Imagine stepping into Noah Caliuri's spot on the wing, for example, this season, where previously there was one of the most hyped schoolboys in the last couple of years or so, and now you've got to start every week. And even those little microcosms of pressure that can have a huge impact on a young player's performance, but also just their day-to-day. Because if you're an academy player at a top school, you're probably training 4 or 5 times a week, and you're playing, it's certainly midweek on the weekends as well as the Continental Tires kicks off, is a huge part of your life. And if you don't have the appropriate level of support around you, because it is difficult to comprehend if you're not in that environment, just how high pressured it can be, despite someone from the outside quite rightly saying, are the stakes that high? You're not a professional sportsman or woman, you're not playing for a World Cup or anything. But that's just not how it works for
relative though, isn't it?
For this great community that we've constructed at schoolboy level, but that it's still incredibly high pressure and people need help with that.
I think one of the bits that's often kind of overlooked, and I'm guessing, Charlie, that you would have been into your school first team pretty early on, is young guys coming into, you've got obviously a first team that's largely made up of upper sixth players, and you've got these lower sixth and under 16 lads that come in often in key positions like 10, and they're being asked to sort of run the show. But you know what schools are like. If you're a year below, that's the equivalent in life terms of being 25 years below. It's like it's a really high pressure thing, and particularly in those sort of key decision making positions, it can be a real tester. I mean, I don't want to embarrass your lad Charlie, but he was stepping in as a youngster for his school team last year in a key position. That's quite a task as a young player coming in and telling the older heads what to do.
Yeah, I think even and he'll certainly admit that himself. Like that was a huge change for him. I'll be honest, he's gone from playing rugby once a week. He went to a state school for the first 5 years and then joined Mill Hill last year. So his kind of rugby training age, I suppose, playing age is relatively new. And so stepping into that environment when you've got the Ryan Jones of the world and Noel Calorie, kind of having to manage them and push them around and organise them around the field, that's a different thing to think about. So I think it certainly took him a good few months to settle in. But and also with the school system was, you only get a couple of months and then you're into 7 season, aren't you? So it's like it's pretty ruthless. Like if you don't get things right, it's pretty ruthless. The season finishes before you know it, and that's it. You're waiting again for another sort of 9 months before it comes around again.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's all in a really short, sharp period of time. Right, thinking about a high-pressured school environment to come into, let's rewind the clock a little bit on Charlie Hodgson. Bradford Grammar School. I judging by my dodgy maths, which is admittedly very dodgy, I think you probably came into that Bradford Grammar School team roundabout. They'd just had a period of being arguably the most dominant side in the country. I think they'd won a couple of Daily Mail Cups as they were back then. They'd done a few St Joseph's festivals. Coming into a schoolboy environment like that, into school rugby, different times obviously, but that must have felt like quite a high pressure moment actually, coming into a team, knowing presumably at that stage that you were a player that had a bit about you. And sort of you've got this sort of glory years just having gone by and thinking, oh, it's our job to take that on.
Yeah, first thing I would say though, that actually those guys who did win, and I think I was in like the first or second year equivalent, year 7, year 8 at that stage of now, they were a huge inspiration to me. Like I remember getting on the bus and going to watch them at Twickenham. I was like, this is unbelievable for schoolboy rugby. I was like, how incredible is this? And that was a huge driver for me initially. I was like, that's what I want to be part of that. I want a piece of that. We didn't get there unfortunately when I reached the first team, but it was still something that I held on to, that I wanted to be part of. And then when I managed to break into the first team in my, what is it, the year 11, and yeah, you've got 2 years above you who have been playing together for, it's not like, I suppose now when you might have a few kids come from the outside, but these boys have been together for 5 years, 6 years, and then so yeah. So then there's a reliance there, isn't there, of like trying to boss people around who've been in that team for, I'd say 5 or 6 years, and suddenly you've got this kid who's 2 years younger than them telling you to do something. So I'm quite a reserved person by nature. So like playing 10 is a bit of a strange one for me, because of course you need to be unbelievably outspoken on the field at times, and then but off the field I'm a little bit different to that. So that's certainly something I had to learn through the early stages of my career, because you can't afford to go quiet in those positions. And I had to develop it quite quickly at Sale when I was given an opportunity. I was fortunate that I had Brian Redpath, ex-Scottish captain, scrum half inside me, so he helped guide me a lot in that. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, he certainly helped me, that's for sure. But there were moments where I had to learn quickly, because and you had to be brave. And I think, and do you know what? Going back to the conversation about Owen, that's what Owen did not lack from the very beginning. That he knew exactly what he wanted, and he was not afraid to tell people what he wanted. I think it was Paul O'Connell that talked about him on that Lions tour in 2013 when he's like, why is the youngest guy in the squad telling everybody and showing everybody exactly what we should be doing? Like, this is ridiculous. And obviously that's the kind of person that he is and has developed into. So yeah, playing fly half is not an easy, certainly wasn't an easy thing for me in terms of kind of managing people and bossing people around, but it's certainly something I had to develop quickly.
And what were you like as a player in those sort of late teenage years? Obviously, as your career went on, you became known for being the best passer of a ball. Certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, maybe further afield even than that. But your passing game was probably your standout as your career went on. But what were you like at that point in time? Was that still probably a key element of your game, or was it just go out there and
Yeah,
have fun.
no, there was certainly more around having fun. There was certainly less structure around how we played the game, not like there is now, and it certainly wasn't detailed as it is now. But my strengths were always in passing game, playing with width, being. I don't know whether I was always really fascinated with game management as well, and the sort of kicking game side, and try and manipulate defenses, and that was both through passing and kicking. I spent a number of years growing up. I didn't watch rugby, I watched rugby league, and I used to sit from the end the whole time. And I know the games are different, and I know they kind of manage their tackle based on what they see in numbers of defenders either side. It was quite a nice learning ground for me actually to watch those games and understand what they were doing. And it was weird how I kind of watched I watched the game, of course, but I started to analyze games from an early age, and I felt like that kind of took me forward into the way I played the game. Then I started to think more seriously about how do I manage a game now at 15, 16, 17. The one thing I'd say now is that the kids coming through when they break through from academy into seniors, they're awesome rugby players, and they're really, really good at those elements around contact area and offloads and all those sorts of things. But one thing I think they struggle with is that game management, because they're so used to just like playing from everywhere, which is amazing. But also, there's a little bit of a shock to the system when they come out the other side and they're into a professional environment. Actually, now you've got to win games for real. Now this does actually mean something, and I think there's a real transition period there, and the quicker people pick that up, the better it is for them.
One glance at the Academy League results tells you everything you need to know about that. That opening day, for example, for Saints against Exeter, when they went 40-0 up at half time, and then the final score was like 64 to 40 odd points, and you've seen some huge results. But I mean, what do you do about something like game management, which you can only you can't really coach someone about that in a training session? You've sort of got to get stuck into it pre-match, post-match, or even during a game. That's when you learn the fundamentals of game management. But it's very difficult when you're in an academy system and you don't get access to a player all that often, especially not sort of someone in a key position like fly half, fullback, scrum half. What do you do to amend that transition, or is it just a case of waiting until they're into the professional environment, sort of learning?
You get on Rugby Buddy. That's what you do.
Yeah, there's definitely certainly come and join me. I think perhaps there's more jeopardy you could put into training. Not that it really makes any difference to those results, of course, but I know I appreciate the teams still want to go on and win that Academy League. Don't get me wrong, but there isn't jeopardy if they lose. It's like, well, they lose, and that's kind of where it and therefore you're relying on a lot of mentality and psychology of players, whether they take it badly, take a loss badly or not, or whether they're happy to ship 45 points. So is there jeopardy in training? I don't know. That's an old school way of looking at it. Like, I don't know how, and I don't even know how that jeopardy would look. So that's quite probably an old fashioned way of looking at training. There's just a lot of learning that could be done online, but I appreciate that academies have limited resources and limited time that they get, like I say, access to these players. So it's very difficult to pick that up. That's just, case by case, I think, more than anything else.
Moving on from Bradford Grammar School, you went to Durham University. You were telling us earlier, did a year there, and then Sale Sharks snapped you up. The Brian Kennedy project, wasn't it? That was who was in charge of things at Sale from a board perspective, and culminated in that Premiership title in, was it 2006? Is that right?
2006, yeah.
With just an incredible team. I mean, Chabal, Jason White, Jason Robinson, your mate Wiggy. Yeah. Just tell me about that sort of progression from when you joined the team through to winning that title. Just, still an incredible story today, 20 years on, near enough.
I think the power of that squad, and I think where you've seen it more recently in other teams, is that the reason why it worked was because we had a really nice balance of homegrown talent, and we had a nice, and then with mixed with some really quality international players who really got high performance and winning. The likes of Jason Robinson, the likes of Jason White, Chabal. But there's myself, Dean Schofield, Mark Quater, Richard Wigglesworth, Andy Titterell. He's obviously coaching the England 20s at the moment. Like a number of players, we'd come through that system together. I turned up, like I say, between my first and second year, I joined for pre-season thinking I'd go back to university, and then I signed this contract at the end of summer, and it was weird how it all kind of unfolded. But we were stuck in student accommodation together. We did everything together. We trained together. We sometimes train with the seniors in the day, and we train with the under 21s at night time. And we just built up this really nice bond across the group. And then, of course, when it was mixed in, when we given up, and one thing I will say as well, actually, that Jim Allender and Steve Diamond weren't afraid to give us opportunities to play in the first team. Sometimes there might be hesitation to let the younger guys come in and have a go, but like I say, I started playing when I was I'd signed in the August, and by the October, November, I was in the first team. I was playing, and they trusted me to be in the squad, knowing that Brian Redpath, who was playing with me at scrum half, was going to support me through that journey. And so they weren't afraid to give us opportunities, and then it allowed us to develop, it allowed us to grow, they allowed us to make mistakes. They didn't discard us when we make mistakes. And then they just kept sprinkling in the odd international that came in, and then Philippe Saint-Andre came in, brought his French contingent, and Chabal and Bruno and the others. And it was just really, really powerful mix of a squad. And I think looking at the way the Surrey's team was a few years ago when they certainly won a few things, that was a real good mix of academy balance. Players who've come through the academy, and they all got it. They all understood each other, but also a sprinkling of internationals as well.
Massive lesson there for all teams, isn't it? On just giving young players chances and allowing them to fail a few times as well, and to make those mistakes. Although the thing that jumps off the page there for me is sharing university accommodation with Dean Schofield. I imagine was quite an experience.
I'd say Scoey, because Scoey was a local lad. He lived at home for a little bit, and then by the time we all moved out the student accommodation, he got put in he was in a different house to me. So thankfully I was not in the house with Scoey, because I mean, he can drink with the best of them, and he would not have been a good influence, I think. So probably a good thing I wasn't next to him.
It's probably just as well that title may not have come.
Yeah, exactly.
What was playing with Jason Robinson like? I mean, obviously you were there from the start of his union career. You saw him go from a guy who'd never seen a ruck before to arguably the best player in the world.
He was a freak of an athlete. He could, testing at the start of the year, you obviously do your standard bench press and squat and chin up testing in the gym. And Robert would he'd walk through, and he wouldn't have had a warm up, and he'd see that a few of the lads are throwing out 140 on the bench, and they're still obviously moving up. And he'd look at it and go, "What's that?" And they'd be like, "Oh, 140." He'd go, "Just give us a go." And they'd knock it off, do one, and go, "Yeah, that'll do me. I'm done." And he'd use that as his score. But he was a specimen when it came to just his ability to beat people was just incredible. It's funny enough, he was actually at the Mill Hill shirt presentation last Friday, and I was listening to him speak on stage there, and he was talking, and he's still in the same shape, and he was like, "Give me a pair of boots now, I can guarantee I'd beat any of you lot in the 5 meter channel now." And I could see some sniggers from the lads going, "Yeah, no chance." And I'm sitting there thinking, he probably would still beat you, because he is so good. But I think what he brought was just a real winner's mindset, a real work ethic that was really easy to follow. But he joined Union having never ever kicked a ball in his life, and yet probably became technically one of the best spiral kickers I've ever seen. Just in terms of, he was unbelievable. Not that he really had to kick that often, and he didn't want to kick that often, but he was taught the technique of doing it, and then he took it away, and he could smash a spiral like you wouldn't believe. And I love that, and to this day I always sort of refer back to him, because it shows that you can take somebody who's never done a skill before, and you can work on it that much and be taught it, and to come out the other side like he did, it's just amazing. So yeah, to have him in the squad is brilliant. One of my first games that we played against London Irish, I think, for some strange reason they just kept kicking the ball to him. I was like, what? And they're clearly not done their research. Defensively, they were all over the shop, and he was like making 40, 50 meter breaks every time he got the ball. I'm like, surely you're going to stop this and try something different. And the ball just kept going over my head, and I was like, this is great. You carry on. Yeah, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What a player just to have outside you, particularly when you're playing at 10 and you're just looking for holes for people to run into, and you've got a guy that doesn't even really need a hole. He'll make it himself.
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate in those early days as well. Mark Quato on one wing, Jason at fullback, Steve Hanley on the other wing. And then, yeah, it's just, you've got unbelievable firepower out there that you'd be crazy not to use. And I think that's where my strength came in terms of passing game and width of pass and decision around that. So it was we all kind of complemented each other, really.
Wilf, I don't know. Are you old enough to have seen much of Chabal and Jason White?
Not as much as I'd have loved to have seen. Obviously, never. I wasn't watching a lot of rugby when they were sort of playing.
Well, let me tell you from my perspective.
Well, how old were you, by the way, back in 2006?
2006.
This is going to be very depressing.
No, I was old enough to take it in. I was 4 years old.
Jeez.
I was doing okay.
Oh my god!
Prop me up in front of the screen. I'd enjoy myself.
Oh my god, that might be my. Wow. I may never recover from that. Well, I'll teach you from my perspective, because that's what everyone wants on a podcast, is a lesson. Jason White and Sebastian Chabal might be the two hardest hitting people I've ever seen in my life. And what I really want to know is, Charlie, obviously as a 10 in training, were you ever on the other side to them? And what was that like, if so?
Thankfully not, actually. Do you know, we played against, was it Bourgoin, I think it was, in France. Chabal was at that club, and we played a European Challenge Cup game against them, and he had an absolute field day against us. He was just picking off for some reason, I probably, maybe I decided it myself. I was like, I'm not defending at 10 today. And it was like, oh wait, defending in the backfield. And he just seemed to just smash through people, like, and just carrying like 4 people on his back the whole time. But Chabal was actually quite a relaxed trainer. Typical French, I think, but when it came to games, he could turn it on. He could really turn it on. Although there was one moment against Munster, I think they played Munster away, and they kicked off. He got caught by O'Connell and O'Callaghan. He literally got carried backwards by about 15 metres. And I think we all kind of looked at each other and thought, no, this is going to be a long day. If he's getting hammered like that, we are going to get absolutely battered. So that was one of those moments that you look back on with not a huge amount of fondness. But no, he and Jason was one of those players who his timing was impeccable when it came to smashing people. Like, he was still a big guy, don't get me wrong, but just somehow managed to get his timing, and he'd smash big boys as well. It wouldn't just be like the little guys like me. It'd be hitting anybody that came down his channel.
Yeah, I mean, anyone watching, listening to this, honestly, go and check Sebastian Chabal, Jason White out on YouTube. Some of the stuff they did was just unbelievable in terms of the physicality. Actually, there's one, Jason White, I think he Scotland against England, and he cut Phil Vickery in half. I mean, Phil Vickery, England's greatest tight head prop perhaps, and Jason White's put him on his back. Unbelievable. But actually, speaking of England, you know, you came through into the England side actually not long after Sale. England debut 44 points in a big win over Romania. I mean, did debuts get better than that?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, that was a strange one. I think, I mean, I'd turned professional August 2000. I was playing for the first team November that year, and then November 2001, a year later, I was getting capped for England. So crazy how kind of things progressed for me. And I think I kind of look back and I think psychologically I wasn't ready. I certainly know that, because I think that game against Romania was sandwiched between, can't remember which way around it was, but South Africa and Australia. And Johnny Wilkinson started both of those games. And at half-time against South Africa, he was literally screaming on the physio bed. And I'm thinking, I might have to go on here. And never a moment, I was just thinking, I think I'm not really sure. I felt like a competition winner. I was like, shit, I don't think I should be anywhere near this team right now. I didn't actually go on. Fair play to Johnny. He survived it and played the full 80. Maybe Clive knew something as well that he knew that I wasn't going to make it either. I'm not sure, but Yeah, that week of Romania was just the week of my 21st birthday. It was incredible, and I don't think you'd see many results like that. Well, you wouldn't see results like that nowadays. I don't think you'd have any mismatches like that unless you get to World Cups and stuff. But even then, World Cups, the standard's still high. Yeah, to go on and beat a team 134-0 and score 44 points is pretty unheard of. But
I mean, it is England's biggest win ever.
Fair play.
Still. They played the Netherlands 3 years earlier, put 110 past them. But yeah, it's only the 5th time that England have ever put 100 points on a team, which is probably telling of how rugby has changed sort of more recently. The last time that anyone put 100 points on at that international level was Uruguay, England, when they scored 111 past them. But yeah, that is a really interesting environment to make your debut in, because how do you reflect on a game like that where, you know, you've obviously played very well, but how many takeaways are there from it as well, especially as a debut, which, you know, it's of course it's amazing, it's a bit of history, but as a player, when you came off the pitch, how do you react after putting 134 points for the team?
Steer clear of Jason Leonard in the bar.
I think I was more concerned that I had my singing initiation and drinking initiation.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the worst thing to worry about. Yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount of reflection. I think it was sort of pats in the back. Well done. Let's move forward to next week. We've got a big game against one of the big Tri-Nations teams. So it was very quickly moved, like not forgotten, but moved on. And I was happy with that. I knew the circumstances. I knew that we weren't playing against a strong team. I knew that had an amazing opportunity, and it went well. But yeah, it is what it is, and quite matter of fact about the whole thing. I'm never gonna start talking about it. Really, it's a nice thing to have, but yeah, it is what it is.
It's a great thing to have. Obviously, sort of career progressed. Ended up first couple of games of the 03 Six Nations. Unusually enough, playing in the centres. What was that like? You've got the sort of you've got Johnny inside you, who's obviously, you'd almost think probably more of a natural fit in the centres if you were going to try and dovetail as a sort of modern day we'd be thinking of it as Ford and Farrell, wouldn't we? How was that for you?
Yeah, that was hard. The reason why it happened was because the year before Johnny got absolutely hammered by Serge Betson in France, and so Clive wanted to introduce this idea of left foot, right foot kicking options across the field, obviously playmakers across the field, which worked and which helped. But like you say, I probably would have worked the other way around. I think the fact that Johnny was the main man in the shirt, so would it have made sense to move him out? I don't know. It was, yeah, they were certainly strange. I'd never played centre in my life, so when I got the phone call from the Clive on the Sunday night to say, I'm picking you, and I was like, well, that was a shock. But I'm also playing at centre. I was like, oh my God. You just kind of deal with it and move with it as quickly as possible and learn. I was fortunate, like that team was just unbelievably experienced. Like that team that went on to win the World Cup in 2003, they played like 50, 60, 70 games together. They knew how to win games. So whether I was playing centre or fly-off, I think I could have slotted it anywhere and it might have been all right because I had so much support around me. Matt Dawson, there's Johnny Wilkinson, Will Greenwood outside me, Jason Robinson full-back. Then you've got Johnson and Kay and Leonard and Delalio and Hale at back. You just like all these unbelievable players. You've got so much experience. I'm going, yeah, I mean, these guys are making my job much easier now. So they certainly supported me through those moments.
Jeez, that'll do, that team, won't it? Wow.
Yeah.
Obviously, then we move on a couple of years, and it's down under with the Lions. Obviously, Clive running that as well. What was that experience like? Obviously, we've all heard the tales of some of the things about that tour, but how was it for you?
Well, first I felt incredibly lucky to be selected. I think Clive took 4 fly halves, which really is unheard of now when you look at it. Stephen Jones, Johnny Wilkinson, Ron Nogara. So I had no preconceived ideas about what I was going to get other than just to go and enjoy the experience and just take out what I could. If I sat on the bench for 2 games and I got on for 5 minutes, I'd have taken it. And then I managed to sort of force my way into the midweek team to start. I started 4 out of the 6 midweek games, I think it was, and didn't get into the test team. But my experience personally, I had a great time. And as I say, I went out there not necessarily expecting. I wasn't expecting to be selected, so everything was just, for me, it was just like a layered another bonus, and it was just I took as much from it as possible. The hardest thing ultimately from that tour was the fact that he'd picked 2 definitive squads very, very early, and it was really obvious who the test team was going to be and who the midweek team was, and so like it didn't bother me because I didn't expect to be in the test team, so it was fine. But I think there were other people who were going and feeling a little bit miffed and a bit messed, that they were missing out because that we were pigeonholed into a team so early. But no, that experience was great. The midweek team went unbeaten. Not that really means anything for a Lions tour. The expectation is you win the test series, don't you? We got absolutely hammered by a very, very good New Zealand team that tour anyway. But personally, it was a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be no complaints really actually about the end result in the test series, because that New Zealand team, as you say, was just unbelievable. Which does make me beg the question. There's a shirt behind your left shoulder, clearly an All Black shirt. Tell me a little bit about that.
This is actually Carlos Spencer's shirt.
No, it's not Dan Carter's.
That's even better, I think. That's even better.
Yeah, I mean, this is Carlos. I can't see whether.
Yeah, there's a little bit of writing on the bottom with Carlos Spencer at the bottom there. Yeah, I've got a few kind of prized possessions, and that's definitely one of them. That's very cool. He was amazing. Like, he wasn't, like, for anybody who's watching this, like, you need to watch Carlos Spencer play rugby, because he just could do things
that were incredible.
Yeah, if you think Finn Russell's a maverick, check out Carlos Spencer.
Yeah, I mean, those two are definitely they're similar, aren't they? I think Finn's definitely learned how to manage a game. Maybe Carlos didn't learn how to manage games. He just played, didn't he? He had fun doing it, and he was in a team that could win games more often than not. But he also was one of those players who Andrew Mertens might have got picked ahead of him a few more times because of the way he played the game. He was slightly more pragmatic, but Carlos was very good, wasn't he? Like, he was incredible, and so the opportunity to swap shirts with him was pretty cool. I mean, we got beaten by 40 points, but I'll still take the swap.
Hey, you got the shirt at the end of the day. That's what matters. Honestly, to add to the list of people that anyone watching or listening to this has got to check out, you honestly have to check out Carlos Spencer. Some of the stuff he did was unbelievable. I remember he kicked the ball over his own shoulder for Saints when he did a year with those. Just like ridiculous thing to do, but obviously came off because he's Carlos Spencer. Just unbelievable.
Yeah. What's that video of him playing for the Blues against the Crusaders where they run the ball from their own line and then he ends up scoring, but he takes it to the touchline? He could have scored under the post, but he runs across the touchline and puts it down and then slots a conversion and gives the 2 fingers to the Crusaders fans. I'm like,
I mean, how many times has Henry asked if he can wear that shirt to training?
He's not allowed to wear this one. To be fair, he's taken a little bit of my kit and he's worn it to training. I'm like, you can't just keep wearing kit that was worn by somebody else. But it just disappears, and the next thing you know, it's in the wash. But
it's a far cry from me nicking my dad's old university socks when I was training. It's a little better than that, isn't it?
But people love the stash. That's a huge part of the modern game now as well, how much kit there is going. And that's pretty prized stuff, that is, yeah.
Stash is what it's all about. It's what it's always been about. It's all about what stash you can get. That's always been the way.
Well, weirdly, and this is a bit of a name drop, but Lawrence Delalio has just moved into our road actually, and he's given my boys loads of kit and said, right, do what you want with that. And I'm like, so they're more proud to walk around with Lawrence Delalio's bag and their kit, even though it's massive, than they are their own dad. So
it's not cool when it says
a lot.
I went to university with his son Enzo, and goodness, he had to look after his kit because every training session, someone was just having a little poke in his bag, seeing if he had anything branded on him that was there that day. Yeah,
keep an eye on the local Facebook marketplace. It's going to be stuff flying.
Exactly.
If the kids start looking like they've got a bit too much cash, it's because they've been flogging Delalio's kit.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing! I'm so jealous of the Carlos Spencer shirt. That's just so cool. Showing my age by my heroes here, but obviously then back to the sort of career. You switched over to Sarries, which we've discussed, but also got back into the England fold, that sort of 2011, 2012 period, and that 2012 Six Nations was a really strong one for you. Must have been good to sort of finish off your time with England with some really good memories.
Yeah, my international career was a real roller coaster, actually. Like, some people take to international rugby like a duck to water. I don't think that was ever the case for me. There were moments when things went really well and moments that were really, really terrible, or what felt really terrible anyway. And they're certainly heightened by the pressure of having all of that. And certainly, like, sort of 2008 up to about 2012, I was in and out of the squad. I was never really trusted by the coaches to play that much. And I genuinely thought that was my kind of moment gone, really. And then there was another change after 2011 World Cup. Stuart Lancaster came in and asked me to get back involved with the squad, and that he was changing the squad a lot. He wanted some experience in it. Weirdly asked me to get back involved again, so I couldn't say no. And yeah, that Six Nations was quite a nice way to end my England career. Like I say, it wasn't always rosy, but weirdly had 2 charged down tries in that tournament, one against Scotland, one against Italy, and I think after that I actually picked up an injury, a finger injury, didn't play after that, and then went on the final tour, and my final tour with them in the summer to South Africa, and that was me done. So yeah, just that Six Nations was yeah, kind of a nice way to finish. I don't know, I think if I had my time I certainly would have played longer for England, but at that stage Owen was coming through, Toby Flood was coming through. I certainly played a lot of games by that stage anyway. Played his 50th game, I think, that year. So yeah, that was just my time internationally. As I say, it was it's weird because I know our first cap was 2001, our last one was 2012. It's a long time. You could probably pick up a hell of a number of games there, but actually I only got 38 caps. Sat on the bench for a number of them as well behind Johnny, but yeah, I think that kind of reflects my international journey. It was a real rocky time. Sometimes it was awesome, sometimes it was terrible. And so yeah, I'm quite reflective on that period, really. Nice to have, but I don't think it's, and I'm really proud of it, but I don't think I look back like with real fondness, because I know that it came with some real sadness as well.
And I suppose, to bring it full circle, it probably informs a lot of the ways you've approached Rugby Buddy and how you build that in terms of those ups and downs in a career, some of the techniques that you might need technically, but also from a mindset point of view, to build a career and to develop the game.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think, as I say, if I'd had my time, I would have worked with somebody from a younger age that would have prepared me for those moments. I'm certainly, in terms of Rugby Buddy, I don't expect people to go on and become international players. Ultimately, what I'm trying to do is educate the kids on how to manage those moments. How do you manage that fear of going into big matches or big moments? How do you manage those setbacks? How do you manage those mistakes? And so, like I say, if there's a huge element of learning that I have to do, and if I can pass that on to this next generation, then I feel like I'm doing a good thing.
You certainly are doing a good thing, Charlie. We're excited to see how it all progresses. We better wrap things up because we've had you on for the better part of an hour, and we know you've got a busy afternoon ahead of you. But thanks so much for coming to join us. So it's been awesome to talk through your career. Certainly, to teach Wilf a thing or two about what happened in the glory days, and I'm sure many of our audience will be doing the same. And honestly, please, everyone, get onto YouTube, look up some of those players we've been chatting about, because wow, there are many differences between the game now and the game then, but players making you jump out of your seat is not one of those differences. They still exist. Mm-hmm. They used to exist. It's fantastic. But yeah, Charlie, thank you very much. Listen, before we go, just give us another shout out where people can get to Rugby Buddy and what it's all about.
Yeah, rugby. So www.rugby-buddy.com. Ultimately, it's about helping you guys play your best, unleashing whatever potential you have, just giving you more confidence, more consistency, and playing with the freedom that you want. So yeah, give me a shout if you've got any questions. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Cheers, Charlie. Cheers, Wilf.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll be back very soon with another episode, but until then, you know where to find us online and on socials and all the rest of it, and we'll have plenty of content coming out for you over the course of the next few weeks, building towards the St Joseph's Festival at the end of this half-term period, something that Bradford Grammar School actually won a couple of times back in those glory days. Cheers, Charlie. Cheers, Wilf. Well done, everyone.